Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on Mobility as a Service, the new transport paradigm in cooperation with Yatio Plus. As you know, this is the second webinar we are holding. We had one 2 weeks ago, but the registration was quite high, so we decided to offer a second webinar. It's not completely identical to the first one because there's been a few announcements since then, which we will also include in this webinar. The agenda for today is I will start. My name is Rasmus Lindholm. I work for Artico ITS Europe with the Mars Alliance, an overview of activities that are happening here. After that, we will move on to Sampo Hoitanen. He's the CEO of Mars Global in terms of showing what Mobility as a Service is all about. And finally, Richard Harris from Xerox, Mars the new transport paradigm. And then hopefully, if we manage to keep to our timing as speakers, we will have a short Q&A in the end. But in that, if you have any questions, there is actually a panel where you can post your questions and we will see them on our end, and we will make sure that these questions are captured at the end of the presentations. In addition, when we go to the Q&A mode, there is in the left-hand corner, there is a button, an icon you can click if you want to raise your hand, and we can unmute you if you then have a question. So without further ado, I'm going to give myself the floor and kick off the webinar. Like I said, my name is Rasmus Lindholm. I'm the Director of Partnership Development Communications Advocacy here at Artico, but I'm also the Secretary General of the Mars Alliance itself. Mobility as a Service is something on everyone's lips. We just got back from the European ITS Congress last week in Glasgow, and there were several sessions and demonstrations regarding Mobility as a Service. Basically, everyone was talking about it, and I think what was very clear was also that everyone has its own definition of Mobility as a Service. Going a little bit back to why this has come about. I mean, we all know the problems our cities are having with increased traffic. We know that the demand of transport is changing. There is new modes coming on with the ride sharing, car sharing, etc. We also see that the technology development is growing extremely fast, which of course, with the increased use of the internet and communication, and everyone is always connected with their mobile phone. We as a consumer, as an end user, we are always looking for optimizing the way that we are planning our trips. We're looking at apps in terms of journey planners, on-street parking, etc. So what we would like to do with Mobility as a Service is, wouldn't it be great if all those needs that you have could actually be combined into one specific service, one app on your phone? So that's a little bit the framework in terms of why we're doing Mobility as a Service. Now today, we actually see that there's a lot of proprietary systems that are popping up everywhere in Europe, north, south, east, and west. And what we would like to avoid is that none of this is proprietary systems, but that they actually is an insurance in terms of roaming agreements. So that when I use my service in Brussels and I go to Denmark, where I come from, I will still be able to use the same service. So a little bit taking the philosophy from the telecom industry. Again, you have one package, you have your own service providers, but you can use your phone everywhere in Europe. So in order to achieve this, we decided to set up a Mobility as a Service Alliance, and this was actually done at the ITS World Congress in Bordeaux last year. From the left, you have Jakob Bangsgaard from FIA, Anna Berner, the Minister of Transport in Finland, and Richard, who would be speaking a little bit later, is on the right. Because we needed an entity, we needed someone who could sort of have a helicopter perspective and define what the framework of Mars should be on a European level, both in terms of how do we ensure creation of a single market, because we know the market is there, but we also know that the business model is not looking as good if you're only operating on a local or regional level. We're looking at the technical perspective, user needs, and the legislative framework that needs to be in place. So the objectives of the Alliance is exactly this. How do we get this done on a European level? How do we develop or support the development of the individual services? Because I still don't believe that we've seen the end of what the services can look like. There's a lot of creative guys out there, startups that are coming up with new ideas all the time, but we need to accommodate that in setting up the framework in Europe. We would also like to look at supporting the development of a toolbox so that the mass operators knows what is available for him or her to provide this service. So in essence, all this work is going to be done in the different working groups that we've now established under the Mass Alliance. And equally important, today not all modes of transport are cooperating. So what we're trying to do in the Alliance is get all modes of transports involved, because it's essential that we figure out how do we cooperate so that the transport operators themselves can provide information about their service and free seatings and what have you, so that the mass operator can actually launch their service. And a lot of it is, of course, also going to be about information campaigns. We need to ensure and educate the end user that there is actually an alternative to buying a car or just having a monthly card to use public transport. So that's also going to be a large part of the Alliance itself. So it's been officially established June 2nd as a legal entity, the Alliance itself. So now we're up and running and going. We have a website where you can also find more information about what the Alliance is doing. Current members, it's growing all the time. So public transport operator in terms of Barcelona is involved, there's a city involved, ministries involved. You have both industry but also some of the associations, ASEA representing the vehicle manufacturers, FIA, the consumers, IOU, taxis and commercial fleet operators. So this is growing. The Alliance is open to everyone, anyone who would like to be part of developing the framework for mobility as a service in Europe. It is not our intention to reinvent the wheel. Our intention is to use what has already been done in different corners, but sort of put everything under an umbrella and provide the high-level guidelines of how to actually do this in Europe. So the 4 different working groups, and sorry Sampo, the single market is not Mass Finland, it's Mass Global. User perspective in terms of what does the user actually want, this is in the hands of Chalmers University. The technical aspects, open APIs, city data, transport data, how is that defined, done by the City of Tampere. And the legal framework is under the control of ITS UK, with support, of course, from the ministries and cities that are involved in this. So we have a work program, we are going. We had, like I said, the official establishment of the AIS bill, so International Non-for-Profit Association, 2 weeks ago. And there was Monday here a roundtable on mobility as a service with the Finnish Minister of Transport, Anna Berner, and the European Commissioner. So the Commission is very much engaged and like the idea of mobility as a service, but them, as anyone else, are trying to figure out what is our role in all of this. So that we're going to help them with in terms of the Alliance. But then from now on and until the end of the year, there are a few milestones in terms of when we aim to have things ready. So I think already in July we're going to have the white papers from the working groups available in terms of how do we define mobility as a service and what do we believe our job is. And the first draft guidelines should be available and ready already by October or end of this year at the latest. So that was a quick overview in terms of the Mass Alliance. I hope I stuck to my timing. I did. I can see it's only 10 minutes past 12. Which means that Sampo and Richard gets 2.5 minutes more each, which I think they will appreciate. So with that, I'd like to hand over to the next speaker, Sampo Huitinen from Mass Global. Sampo, the phone is yours.
Thank you, Rasmus. Let's put the show on the road. It will be Mass abbreviated. So my name is Sampo Hietanen. I come from an artist formerly known as Mass Finland, that is now Mass Global. We changed the name. Lots of change since the first edition. First of all, names have changed. We have launched. So within 2 weeks you can expect a lot nowadays in the field of mobility. I'm being called Father of Mobility as a Service, and I don't mind at all. At least I think I've been dumb enough to talk about it for a long time. But this concept is, like Rasmus said, there are lots of definitions, and that's how it should be. It's more of a movement and more of a change in the whole ecosystem of transport, which is huge. And there are lots of lots of mothers, lots of fathers, lots of godmothers and godfathers, of which you will hear also afterwards, one of the biggest ones. To me, what mobility as a service is, it is the new freedom of mobility, and that what we need to strive, for. Lots of things that are bubbling in the scene of mobility at this stage, but still not any of them have been able to do this one thing for just one individual, to create a complete set of mobility to them. And that's what actually got me to thinking about the whole mobility as a service is, could someone really offer everything from one stop, and even in the same way as we do telecom, as a subscription that gets you access to everything. Maybe something like this, and I will show you the first packages that we've actually launched and are doing the first ones at the moment. But these are the sort of nice examples, probably not the right ones, but something similar to this, that you can just have your way about it to really go and get everywhere. What it's really about, you need to follow the money eventually in the system, and if you follow the money, it lies with the ownership of cars, which is good. It's a great product, but then the question with mobility as a service is, could we do even better? Could we have something that promises the same ultimate freedom of mobility? And I would argue that it's a strong feeling, the whole freedom of mobility in people's minds. Why on earth would they otherwise be overpaying for something that they don't really use? And that's where we need to go. But it's not that far. In many of, especially in European cities, you have good public transport. There is good car share, ride shares, taxis, and all of them. Just that nobody combines them and makes them into a service promise to the end user. And I think that's the core and the essence of everything, that somebody really makes a promise that, look, I'll get you there. You need to go to the summer house, which is really Finnish thing, or you need to take your kids to football, you need to do this, it'll be taken care of, don't worry. And that's what we're trying to go. The pieces are there. We don't have to reinvent anything of it. Just let more and more innovation come into the field of transportation, and we will have a better mobility as a service. Why is it important? I think that it is about time that we think of transport as a booming business. I like the analogy from telecom because it's so similar in so many ways. Had I been talking about telecom becoming the hottest topic, the biggest business driver for decades to come in the year 85, I think I would have been laughed at. Because, you know, just plugging phones like this, there's nothing really exciting about that. There's no business, there's no innovation there. But then when the structures really changed, all changed also in that one. And the same is now ongoing in transportation. And it's ongoing faster than, look, me, who's been talking about it, could have ever predicted. Things are moving along in such a pace that you couldn't imagine. Then the question is, why now? In all disruptions, and I like to think that if we want to think about the disruption that's ongoing in transportation, we shouldn't look at the curves, and I'm a transport engineer myself, we shouldn't look at the curves from within the sector. We should take and draw the analogies, draw the similarities from other sectors. If you think of media, if you think of what happened in banking and also many other fields, it's been the enablers first. There's been trends that happen, and then eventually the disruption comes. Actually, I think that it's always been in three phases. First, you have the denial. That was turn of millennial in transportation. Everybody said, yeah, this internet boom is cool, but has nothing to do with has nothing to do with transportation. The second phase has been for the last years is where you think, okay, we can do something with digitalization. You turn the screw a bit here and there, but keep all the same structures. And then eventually, and this tends to hit every player in the field always, comes to disruption. And I claim that the phenomena, the technical enablers are right there now. But why is it important? And this is when I go to the telecom operators every now and then, that this is where they wake up. So if you're a telecom provider, now you should be waking up. Because they have this one figure that they look at is the average revenue per user, ARPU, that is whatever an individual on average spends every month on this. And in transportation, it's 10 times as big as in telecom. So it definitely is huge. It's almost about that size. And then the question is, where is that money? Where does it go to? Roughly about 120 out of that 300 is capital cost of a car. 120 is using the car, and only 60 is the rest. Now, most of that, it's the second largest consumption for individuals, and most of that money goes to ownership of cars, which is quite great, but it's just not really effective. And it's easy to argue that this is one of the biggest chances for getting productivity gains, making economies grow, because it's the innovation that actually makes productivity gains that drives the world economy, drives growth. And if you look at these figures and put mass in there, and you see that it probably is the biggest disruption for the next decades to come. If we can play with these figures and make that into something more productive, but at the same time something that still contributes, still gives people the freedom of mobility that they so value. And why I think that they value it, because you use it for 4% and you're willing to pay a lot of it. I'll give you an example. I was in Dublin, that was some months ago, and somebody said, look, this MaaS is like integrated ticketing. And then he went on and said, because look, I use 700 euros for my annual public transport ticket, and kind of gets me everywhere. And then I said, yeah, but you just raised your hand when I asked who has a car. And he said, yeah, I need the car every now and then. I said, okay, how much? Is it like 40% out of your trips, or how much is it? And he said, no, it's roughly about 10, actually closer to 5% of my trips that I actually do with the car. So you spend 700 euros a year for all the 90 or 95% of your trips, and you spend over 10,000 euros for the remaining 5 or 10%. So that is where the business case is. That's where the money into the system lies, definitely. On the other hand, if you look at the other sectors, what's been in every other field as well, is that on top of these silos that are now popping up, and all of them have apps, and that's nice to show in an app, because you now need, if you want to be advancing and you want to try all of these, you need 30 up to 50 different apps to go around. So like everywhere else, there will be an aggregation or operator level that actually combines this offering to you and packages, bundles, and makes it a service for you. And that is coming. That is a new field of business, just like in any other field, and it's definitely coming. Now it's all about making the rules such that we can actually make it happen. Transport is so big that nobody can actually do it alone. That is the difference between telecom as well. The mobility as a service offering is just as beautiful as the pieces that it's made of, and only as good as them. There are a few ways that this market can play out, and I think that these are my visions of how it might happen. It's all about the connections between the transportation providers and the aggregators, or the mobility as a service, the mobility operators. I think that there are a few ways. If we do it the internet way, where somebody takes global dominance, that might happen if we don't make the ecosystem work. It's going to be hard, but it might just happen. Then there's the other one where public transportation tries to be the only service provider over there. I don't think it can be. It can be good to get started. You can have something up and running pretty fast, but eventually people will want choice. They will want different types of packages that are not probably using the same modes, or it's not so much about transport, it's about something else. And we'd also love to have a field where you can cross-use these, do roaming even in that level, to harness also innovation that you can do Segway share or bike shares or even drones, where all of these have had to now take their stuff all the way to the end user. I like this picture. It's actually Finnish ministry who I've stole this from, because it shows the sort of new ecosystem of mobility, and where now the biggest innovation actually is with the dotted lines. How do we get everything pluggable so that the end user benefits as much, that we actually create much more innovation than even now, and we make sure that the end user gets what they want. And what they want is multiple choices of different operators that actually can tap into everything, meaning everything from taxis, Ubers, to public transportation, to car shares and everything. So I've been on the evil side of making business and revolutionizing the whole global scene for some while. We have a big task ahead to change everything. Actually, I think where the market really goes to, once we make it irrelevant, how do you actually move about? It's all about how do you want to spend your 90 minutes now that you got it back. We want to really make sure that people have the freedom of mobility because it's such a strong feeling. You have the insurance, what I call car nowadays, so how do we do it without it? We want to take away the whole pain of how do I get to any place, and we really want to make sure that we make this ecosystem in a way that does not pollute anymore. That's not given. We have to make it that way. So it's not about the journey planning. It's not about that. Sometimes you want to be that, but mostly what you want to do, it's about the weekends. And that's where the car and everything is good because you really want to go out on a whim. And that's why we named our service that we just launched this Monday, Whim, because at least we think that it really describes the whole essence of mobility as a service in that sense, that you can just, take and go. So what we're doing now is you can have different types of packages that for any individual, for some freedom of mobility is about making the cost down, for some is having convenience or luxury as much as possible. And we want to push the price enough to really make it lucrative even in the early stages where some of the productions might not be as effective as maybe in future days. But it's also about getting access to car. Sometimes you need it, so it's nice to change so that instead of what you used to have is your car that you're committed to, that you can have a garage full of cars nowadays. And that's what we want to give people. So how does it work? You can have a planned thing. You can put where you want to go. You have your favorites, and you have your calendar connections where, there's an example, me going to meeting with Paul, and I have the route planning as it is. But not always will I want to do that. Sometimes, well, not today, it's raining in Helsinki, but I might just want to go and have an ice cream. So I'll just push it, get a taxi, and there it is, taxi arriving. I didn't really want to use the route planning and be as planned as possible. So I just went out on a whim. And while I wait for the taxi, I can actually also start working, and this is what I do for work. Well, yeah, I kind of use Facebook every now and then. But let's skip that. And the taxi's here. All I do is show my tickets, and I still have my public transport ticket there as well in my same wallet. And I even have a car when I need it. So I can take it for one day, I can take it for a week, or I can have it for a further time. We're not here to really preach people about what they need to do, but give them options. But just take away the pain of being hooked to just owning the car all the time. Many of them will actually be surprised that they can work without the car being there all the time. But we don't want to preach about that. So I went with the taxi, and now I got moving from the ice cream parlor, and I really go to meeting with Paul, and now I can walk and I can take the bus because, okay, I still have the time to do that. It shows me like any good route planner, and it actually combines taxis as well if you want to that, if there's nothing good enough available, and it helps me all the way. Then, because I was good, and this is something special in the whole mobility as a service, because I've got the package for a fixed amount, and we want to push people not just because we want to do good, but we want to push people into good decisions, because public transport, walking, and biking, which are actually good for cities as well, is actually money in our pockets. So now that I was good and I walked a bit and I took the bus, I got some points to really go for something that I never could afford before. If I commute a bit more in a smart way, I can have a Tesla for a weekend, and this is a cool addition, I think. So we've launched a bit earlier than we ever thought. It's been only some while, and we've been able to push the boundaries. We want to do at least in few areas, it's not just a city thing, because the freedom of mobility is about getting to other places as well, even in other regions. We're looking for 2 other areas. We're discussing with about 10 different areas how easy they are, and we are going to, at least I hope we're going to launch this year in 2 other areas of the world. This is our evil plan for world domination. It is a global game. I think that the mobility operators can work on a global scale, and they should, and this is our plan to do that. So you want to ask, how is it done? What does it really take? And we've launched a mass readiness index that for us represents what we look at in a place. How does it go? There are a few parameters in that, roughly about 80 something, and I'll take the most vital ones. At this stage, it's all about the transport service availability, and especially the backbone of it is oftentimes that it's better if it's public transport. And in public transport, if you look at it, it's all about the mobile ticketing and the commercial agreements. If we have those as API and we can actually buy tickets, so what we want to do is buy the tickets. And if we can do that, we pretty much can launch in an area anywhere. So that's what we're aggressively looking at in whatever areas. And if anybody there in the audience has this, please contact us as fast as possible, and we might be able to launch anywhere in the world. We've launched also even the technical part of it, because I think that this is an ecosystem thing. It's not about making proprietary systems. It's not. The idea is that lots of players should be. There should be lots of operators that use the same transportation means, and that's why we also want to be real open about it. If you want to put it really short, these are the 2 things. Actually, the one thing that we need is the APIs to existing transportation. And by APIs, I do not mean journey planner. That is good, it's needed, but it's not enough. We need the mobile ticketing part of it, because the payment has to be in background. I cannot keep on giving people tens of different types of cards, and the card is not the user interface for sure. If as governments you want to speed up this, if you really want to mess it up, put a tender out. Otherwise, if you want to harness the markets, give the people the money and let them do the tender, and that will give you much more players in the field. But make sure that in the background you have the APIs existing. We know that now we've launched. You can come here and check it out how it works, and hopefully we can show you in lots and lots of places how MaaS really actually works. Thank you. I'll turn over to the Godfather Richard.
Yeah, Richard, let's move over to you. And thank you, Sampo, for keeping the time.
That's amazing. I've never been able to do that before.
No, it's a first. I've made a mark of it. So Richard, from an existing ICT provider who's also a lot involved in transportation itself, I'll turn the phone over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, it works.
And you can hear me, obviously. Okay, right. I've changed the title of the presentation from last time because I understand we maybe have a more international audience with us today. So in the States, they call mobility as a service mobility on demand. So that's the only difference in the title. Okay, what's going on here? Okay. Right, so you may wonder why some chap from Xerox is talking to you. Well, we do lots in transportation. We process more than 100 million public transport tickets worldwide every single day. We process more than $5 billion in road tolls every year, and we process more than 16 million parking violations to help cities control and manage their networks better. And all of these systems require sophisticated, secure, operational back office systems. This is my view of the transport element of the smart city. So how ITS can actually contribute to the smart city vision. And it looks complicated, but stay with me, it's quite simple. So can you see my mouse okay? Do you get to see my mouse, anybody? Rasmus, can you see my mouse? Let's hope you can see my mouse.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So in the middle we have a processing capability. I call it a mobility analytics platform. And of course, the most important thing is to know what's going on with our different networks, different systems. So the systems that we operate or are operated within the city, they all produce data. We also have different sensors, floating car data, which is vehicles traveling around the networks, loop detectors, video, CCTV, social media. All of these give us information on what's going on. So on incidents, congestion, capacity, air quality, weather conditions, and so on. So taking that information, merging it with other data like events, weather information, we turn the data into something more intelligent. And we make it available as open data so that app developers can also feed their clients. But what we do with this intelligence is we better manage our systems in the city, and we better inform people so that they can take more intelligent decisions, more informed decisions about how they travel. And I've got some payment systems here, but that could just be a single account, as Sampo quite rightly said. But underpinning all this are the 5 key areas of the business case. So how do we pay for that? How do we make sure it's sustainable? The policy drivers. So how do we make sure that everything we're doing here, as we adjust these levers on the services and information, support the policy objectives for the community? How do we make sure that we've got the user needs understood, so we know what people want and know how they want it? How do we measure our performance, key performance indicators? And very importantly, how is it governed? So this could, for example, be run by a private organization, but even if it were run by a private organization, I would still want the authorities to be involved in the governance so that we can make sure that we're hitting the policy requirements for the community. So this is, for me, one of the keys for the future of ITS and the future for mobility as a service, because it's access to data which is key. So talking about back office systems, I know this sounds sad, but I actually have a favorite back office system, and it's the one that we've put for the public transport in Montreal. In Montreal, in Canada, there are 19 different operators of the public transport system, and they run 3,000 buses, 5 train lines, 4 metro lines. The people using the system just use their Opus smart card to access the services, and they don't really care whose bus or whose train it is. What makes this different is that this is one single back office system, and the 19 operators all share it, but their sensitive data is kept separate and secure just for them. So that means that they can operate their businesses without worrying about what the competition are looking at on their system. But more importantly, because all of this data is in one back office, we know that it's compatible, so we can carry out data analytics. You'll see there that there's a 12% increase in ridership when it was all joined up, because it makes it so much easier for people. But data analytics is the key to giving us better understanding of what's going on. And this is a quick slide. This is Nancy in France, and what we did was we just took information on where people joined the public transport network, where they left the public transport network, and we can build up a picture of their travel behavior. Now, the trick is with this is if you repeat this over time, every week or every month, you'll see changes emerge, and those changes mean that people are changing how they travel, and it can help you identify new travel options, new travel demand at a much earlier stage, so that you can satisfy the user demand. So exploiting the data that we're already collecting is a really, really good thing to do. So driving urban mobility of these younger people. By 2025, the 18 to 24-year-olds will represent half of the urban workforce. They're less reliant on cars. They take decisions on a whim or on the fly. I'm glad that Sampo chose whim rather than on the fly for his company name, for his service offering, much better. And they're drivers of the sharing economy. Now they're interested in access to information and to services rather than actually owning them. We did a survey recently of 19 cities across Europe, in the UK, France, Netherlands, Germany and Benelux. And the report is available. There's details at the end of the presentation. But looking at the Generation Z, so the 18 to 24-year-olds, looking at future transport, this is what they think they will be doing, how they will be behaving by 2025. 51% will decide where to live and work based upon the mobility services available to them. 41% don't think they'll be using cash to pay for their transport. Half of them think they'll just have one app for all their transport needs. And 37% think they'll be using electric vehicles, and 32% think they'll be using self-driving vehicles. But one of the problems with these new mobility services are that, well, this is a slide from Los Angeles. You can see how the range of applications and services available to people is changing very, very quickly. And understanding what's available is becoming a real problem. So we've launched, probably about 2 months ago now, 2 systems, one in Los Angeles and one in Denver. This is just a slide about the Denver one. And this is a way of showing people what mobility options are available to them, how they can access it and how they can use it. So it's an app-based system. The user can sign on, join the system, download the app and register, put in their personal preferences for a journey, so quickest, shortest, greenest, least interchanges, and then the mobility marketplace, where we have all of the services on a back office platform, will offer them options. They can choose the option, start the trip, and they can get updated as they go. So very simple, but what it actually means is this for the stakeholders involved. So for the users, it provides them with information on all of the options available to them. They get personalized analytics, they can change their requirements, and they can keep track of things. For the mobility operators, they can sit on this back office platform, this mobility marketplace, like the back office system I showed from Montreal. So their sensitive data is kept separate and secure for them. Everybody on the mobility marketplace is treated the same. So Uber and Lyft, because they're bigger, wouldn't get preference over some local mobility system where maybe some people have got together to get a minibus service going around some villages to take people to an urban hub. So all of the services are treated the same. So these companies have access to more customers. They have a platform where they can launch their services, and they're treated equally. And importantly for the regional authorities, so they have they can get regional mobility analytics, system optimization, because people have a better understanding of what services are available for them, public feedback and co-creation. And co-creation is this identifying new service needs and helping them to develop, and a revenue share in the future. So this is really, I think, an exciting way to provide mobility as a service, and rather than being a private operation, it's badged and operated by the city, the same as in Los Angeles. For a mobility as a service operation, I think you need a front-end app, which we've just demonstrated, an account-based system and payment systems, a good back office, and maybe a mobility marketplace. So to help with the implementation and the payment side of it, at the ITS Congress in Glasgow last week, we launched our Xerox Seamless Transportation Solution. And there's a short video.
In today's world, where people are moving around more than ever before, transportation needs to be made easier. But in reality, seemingly simple things like buying a bus ticket works very differently from city to city. Eric Sampson is one of the leading figures in transport strategy. Some years ago, I was advising UK ministers on the implementation of their through ticketing policy. The problem was that there weren't any smart card standards, so different local authorities had very different products, and for the user travelling from one to the other, it was impossible to get a seamless journey. Today we've got a different sort of problem. We've got a lot of good products, but they tend to be niche products. They don't necessarily work together, and in some cases there's outright competition. Xerox Seamless is delivered as a hosted service, which means transport operators do not have to make large investments in technology and back office operations. It can be used for all kinds of services, including trains, buses, park and ride facilities, or carpooling. It works with different types of services, in a single city or across a region or country. For the traveller, it's really simple. Download the free app, which also includes a trip planner. Set up your account with your payment details. Then simply validate your travel each time by tapping the tag installed in the bus or train. There's no need to buy a ticket in advance. The solution will calculate the best fare for the trip and charge it to your account at the end of the month. In the last year, Xerox Seamless has been piloted in the French city of Valence and the surrounding area.
Il se décline très facilement et on est pleinement satisfait, que ce soit au niveau du syndicat et au niveau des opérateurs, on n'a pas de difficulté. Bien sûr, en fin d'année 2015, nous avons fait un état des lieux, on a regardé un petit peu les résultats, quelles étaient aussi les observations, et 90% des voyageurs qui utilisent ce nouveau mode de paiement sont satisfaits. On est les premiers, on est avec Xerox, et on sait que demain, on va pouvoir conquérir encore plus de voyageurs grâce à cette nouvelle technologie.
Seamless gives you an answer to almost all of today's transport challenges. It means more livable cities for everyone around the world.
And what we mean by more livable cities is actually moving away from the idea of better urban mobility and smart cities, which kind of sound a bit techy. We want the cities to be better for people to live in. So that means hitting the policy drivers of most of the authorities. And those include safety, social inclusion, better mobility, improved environmental performance, accessibility to the transport mobility networks, improved efficiency, better quality of life, reliable systems, healthier environments, better economy. And of course, one of the things that we're looking at as an ITS industry is the three key themes and challenges, I think, which are on the agenda at the moment are emissions, cooperative and automated vehicles, and mobility as a service. And I really believe that mobility as a service is the way that we're going to join up and solve many of these problems. So that was my last slide. The reports, the surveys that I mentioned are available to download, and with that I'll hand back to the Chairman Rasmus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Voila, 2 seconds. So, you've heard three different presentations, and we have 15 minutes for a bit of a Q&A, so please raise your hand. We've also received a few questions during the presentations. The first one is talking about the Mars platform, and I think it more refers to you, Sampo, in terms of Mars Global and what you're presenting. He's asking if there should only be one Mars platform.
Oh, have we ever seen a really productive market change or disruption where there's a bottleneck at some point? And the answer is no. I think that any type of system where at some point in the ecosystem you have no options, just one is not going to be a durable one. Sadly enough, it can get you started, and of course one transportation provider should not have two different platforms, but how that is consolidated, I think it should be free markets. Otherwise it might be kind of hard. Then for the end user, I think that pretty easy answer. Normally people tend to like choice, don't they?
Yep, I fully agree with you, Sampan. I think even for the scalability of things, I think if there is, mass operators in different cities, regions, countries that has their own customers, and I think it refers a little bit to the marketplace that Richard was talking about before. What we need to make sure is that we can connect the dots on a B2B level, so that Mars Global can connect to Mars World Domination, and by then expanding their service offering. So I think that link B2B level is extremely important.
I think that the world of trying to integrate on a higher level is already way of the past. It's more about just open up your APIs, and there will be a consolidation layer, and it's much easier. I think that the sort of way that we used to think about it, wouldn't it be great to have one card to rule the whole of Europe, ends up in hundreds of millions of projects that there's lots of integration but tends to never work. It's just so much easier if everybody comes up with an API that gives access to their module. The more modular we make this system, the better it is, because it has then competition at all layers. Look, I come from Finland, and we had a neighbor called Soviet Union, and it tended to be that in many cases there was a big idea of trying to integrate on a higher level. It's not normally the fastest way. So the more modular we can make this, the better. But I do understand that in the beginning it's kind of tough, and that's also why we really need this Mars Alliance to come up with the rules, so that if different players open up, they would open up in quite similar way. And normally you wouldn't hear this, but I'm a big fan of Xerox really pushing the agenda as well. We need the big players also to be on board of this and to have this discussion with us. Glad that, Richard, you're pushing the agenda.
A pleasure.
Thank you. There's another question. Any thoughts about including shopping delivery, as this takes away the hassle of bulk stuff on bikes? Also, need of parents with infants must be taken into consideration, like providing car seats or bike helmets.
Yeah, could I answer?
Xerox or?
I'd just like to say that when we talk about mobility as a service, we talk about but I think that it's quite clear to all of us in the Mobility as a Service Alliance that we're also talking about deliveries. I think that one of the challenges for cities is keeping their high streets open and viable, and arranging easy deliveries of goods that people might want to buy in the cities, I think, is an important part of keeping our cities vibrant, because otherwise people may just go to look and then go home and order something from the internet. So I think that certainly goods deliveries and personal requirements for things will develop through mobility as a service. With respect to cycle helmets and other things, I think that as connected and automated vehicles begin to be deployed more widely on our streets, the actual design of those vehicles will change. So, for instance, I would imagine them to be able to do some self-cleaning of the vehicles between each use, and I think all of those things about actually tailoring it for people's requirements will emerge over time as we progress.
And from my side, I'm guessing, especially related to these specific requirements in terms of parents that needs a car seat for their kids, I am sure if there is a demand for something like this, we saw from Sampo's demonstration that there is different types of vehicles that you could book. I'm sure a fourth vehicle could be added in terms of child seats. So I think if the demand is there, I think the service will automatically come. And that was one of the things that we're trying to do within the Mars Alliance itself, and to try to figure out how do we support the development of all these new services by taking into account what it is that the end user really likes.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's not just the availability of a crash helmet for a child, or the availability of a car seat. It's the availability of a clean crash helmet or a clean car seat. So I think that we have things to learn and systems to develop.
And I think we need to look, and Richard, you guys are doing a lot in the Internet of Things, or we could call Internet of Transport. And you have to imagine a world where you could, let's see, look around and you see lots of means of transport, but assume that you could actually tap into any one of them. And I think that's what the Internet of Things will give us as an opportunity. My car, still, I'm trying to get rid of it pretty soon, is lying there. And had I options for good service in that, I would push a button now and say, look, someone else use it if I get a bit of money out of that to make it at least work for me. And we actually have all those things available, and they're not that far away.
Would agree.
Thank you. Another question is, who do you believe are the main candidates, I mean types of organizations, companies, for becoming the mass aggregator?
If I take this, I think that you have the options. The transportation providers that exist now will definitely, some of them will somehow evolve into mobility as a service operators. There's a risk in that I already start to see that if we get into a place where the transportation providers want to become aggregators or mobility operators in that sense, using all modes of transportation, it's just fine. But if they use their existing oligopolistic situation or they're offering now and close others from tapping into that transportation and use that as competitive edge, it's not going to be an offer that it's not going to get the ecosystem going. So assume that there's a rail provider and we will be mass operator, but we will close our trains from any other operators, or we make the deals a bit different. Not a pure ecosystem. It will end up like in telecom, that somehow they will be then opened up. So that's also why I think we need to think about this. So the transportation operators, then there are players like us that are kind of new players. I would assume that, and I know that some of the teleoperators are looking into this field. And then of course the car OEMs that I would assume that will also start being, and they are big in this scene already. So at least that type of players. But I'm expecting something from insurance companies as well, and who knows? There are lots to be taking in this.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out is what that role specifically is, because like you said, there's many stakeholders who's trying to move into that area. I know the automobile clubs are doing exactly the same.
Yeah, and they have a good way of going about it, because they already have an offering that is quite similar, and kind of like the auto clubs being in this space. And FIA has been one of the biggest drivers in pushing the agenda in mobility as a service, and for a reason.
Yeah.
And if I could just, the authority side, I think that one of the things about mobility as a service is that we should be looking at fewer back office systems, but those that we do have should cover a wider area. So I would think regional governments could well be a mass integrator operator.
Thank you, Richard. Just before we move on, I just wanted to announce to everyone that both the recording of this webinar and the presentations will be available on the Viaggio Plus website and the Mars Alliance website. So not half an hour after this webinar is done, but eventually we will manage to put the presentations and the recording on there.
Monday.
Just picking up what you said, Sampo, in terms of who the potential mass aggregators could be, specifically related to the car manufacturers, there's another question here, which is, what are your thoughts on the future role of the vehicle manufacturers in this ecosystem? Today, the vehicle manufacturers are providing vehicles which are being run by operations for the TSP. But what could the potential role of them be in the future? And this is a question coming from Marcus Eriksson from Scania.
There will be vehicles, and just that there are many ways. If the ownership turns more into usership, it's not the death of automotive industry. It's a change. Like in any disruption, of course, Some players are better at it, and some are worse at it. If you think of, let's take Finnish examples. We have the oldest car. I think the average age is above 12 years. Certainly, if cars are not owned that way and they're used more than 4%, they will not be that old. So the life expectancy is a bit shorter, so they run in a different way. The need for people to get around is not going to change. It's just might work in a different way, that the ownership is not the part of it. And of course it is the ways that, because now they are made to be really personal, the vehicles. If they are used by many, it has a lot of design of the vehicles. But they still have, the car manufacturers, all the knowledge of branding, imaging, and everything. And I don't think that it's the end of car manufacturers, even if it changes. But it will definitely change the market structures.
I agree with you, Sampo. I think that the vehicle manufacturers will remain, the cars will remain, but the uses of them will be different. I mean, if you saw the members of the Mars Alliance before, you also had ASEA involved. So the vehicle manufacturers are represented in the Mars Alliance as such. And I know they are, because they know that maybe in 10 years' time, the market is going to look different for them. But in anticipating what that market is going to look like, they've already started to engage. And you also see, like you said, different vehicle manufacturers are offering car sharing, ride sharing today, and are trying to sniff out what the end user would like in the longer term.
Yeah, and of course, if you think of the examples from other fields where disruptions have already happened, to be honest, most of those disruptor comes from outside the field, but there are other examples. So on the other hand, said keep on sleeping, and of course you'll be disrupted and sort of being disrupted from the side. But I see a lot more happening from the car OEMs, and I don't see them sleeping, at least not all of them.
No, I fully agree.
Rasmus, I'd just like to add to that. We shouldn't think of the vehicle manufacturers as the enemy, as on the evil side. I think it was at the ITS World Congress in Detroit a couple of years ago that Bill Ford said that they want to be in the mobility business. If you look at the improvements that have been made over the last 5 years in fuel consumption performance figures from vehicles, I think that they're really in touch with what's going on, and they realize that people that use cars will also use other forms of transport. So I see that they're already very much engaged.
I agree with Richard. You see what Ford's doing, what GM is doing, BMW, Daimler, they're all moving into this space, and they're all claiming more and more into becoming mobility providers. The good things of design and those will not disappear from this.
Yeah.
Okay, we are coming up towards, we have one more question before we finish. I mean, it's related to funding that might be available in terms of Mars Plan. I mean, what I can say from that point of view is that we are looking at Horizon 2020, we are looking at CEF, we are looking at European Investment Bank, we are looking at other funding opportunities in terms of setting up some of these operations, doing more pilots to get more knowledge and more data in terms of what the end user would actually want in all of this. So I know that different things are specifically going on, but I don't know today where funding specifically will come from. I think with that we should close the webinar. We've had over 70 participants today, so I'm very, very pleased with this. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Sampo, for the presentation, the good discussions, and yeah, again, everything will be available on the Mars Alliance website and the RG Plus website, as you see on the screen now. Thank you very much for listening. I hope we made it interesting for you. I hope you learned something. And if you do have any questions or follow-up afterwards, I'm sure that both Sampo, Richard, and myself will be happy to answer anything that you have. And finally, again, if you want to be part of the Mars movement, if you would like to be part of how mobility as a service is set up in Europe, please feel free to contact me, and I will do my utmost to make sure that you're included in the Mars Alliance. Thank you very much, everyone.